Good morning. So today's daf is daf Hey, and we are in the middle of daf Dalad Amid Base 4b in the halachas of today's daf is daf Dalad, and we're in the middle of daf Gimel. We're in the middle of daf Gimel Amid Base. In the Gemara, the Mishnah had said that they would set up tables at the 15th of Adar in order to begin the process. People should know that they have to pay. And on the 21st of Adar, they would start mamashkinin, which is that they would start asking people for the money, and if they didn't give it, they would take a guarantee, collateral. And the Mishnah said who's obligated and who's not obligated in this. So we're going to start again from the Gemara. We don't take a mashkan, meaning you don't take a collateral from children, from minors. But we do ask them to pay. They wouldn't be obligated in this mitzvah. They're minors. So this is what we say. It's talking about that he's already reached puberty, bar mitzvah, so he's already obligated in paying the coin. However, we don't take collateral until he's 20, because that's what the Torah says. Everybody that passed through the count, from the age of 20. So at the age of becoming an adult, he's mechuyev to pay. He's obligated to pay, and we ask him to pay. However, we don't take a mashkin until he's 20. Avon Levi Shtei Cyrus Leibeda. So then he's not in this mitzvah. Yeah. Ulamashkin aim a mashkinin. Alpha P Shevi Shtei Cyrus. But even if he's already an adult, we don't ask him to give a collateral even if he hasn't paid yet on the 21st. The Gemara says, the correct way to read our Mishnah is that we don't take a mashken from kahanim, we don't take collateral from kahanim, not because of dar keshalom, because of to bring peace, to keep the peace, because that would be true for anybody else as well. Why specifically the kahanim? Or rather, it's out of kavod, out of honor, since they are doing the service, the avodah and the Beis Hamikdash, and the money that we're gathering is for the avodah and the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, we have to rely upon them, and that's the honor that we give them to trust them that they would pay up. On Rabbi Yehuda, however, the Mishnah says that Rabbi Yehuda testified in the name of Ben Bukhri that Kahanim actually were exempt, and nevertheless, there was nothing wrong with them paying. And we don't consider it that if they pay, the funds being used by them from their gift would be considered a private carbon as opposed to a communal carbon, which is what we're supposed to be having. However, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai disagreed, and he said, no, the Kahanim are obligated. They're looking for a way to exempt themselves. So Amar Rabbi Brachia, time Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the reason Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says that even Kahanim are obligated in this mitzvah is on account of this pasuk, Ze Yitnu. It says, this shall be given, or they shall give. And Ze is the numeric value of 12. Yud Beis Shvatim Yitnu. All 12 Shvatim, all 12 tribes should give, and that includes the Kahanim and Levim. Rabbi Tavi b'Shem Rabbi Menuna came a Shiva Chacham Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So Rabbi Tavi says, in the name of Rabbi Menuna, that this was the response of the Chachamim to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda. This is what they responded to Rabbi Yehuda, and in explaining why the Kahanim are obligated in in giving the shekel. And Rabbi Yehuda said that they're not obligated, and on that the Chachamim have this response. So they say, how can you say that Rabbi Yehuda would be, how can you say that a Kohen would be exempt of this mitzvah on account of on account of that they're not all they're not a part of the count, and yet if they want, they're allowed to give the shekel, and it's not going to ruin the communal aspect of it, meaning that even though that they're donating and they're not obligated, and so therefore it's their own the carbon purchased with their funds and not a part of the communal fund, because they're not obligated in the communal fund. So it's obviously being when their funds are being used, when their gift is being used, it's a private carbon, and that should make a difference, because we see that there are halachic differences in regards to communal carbon versus a personal carbon. Chatas yachid mesa, a chatas tzibur mesa, a private chatas, an individual person's chatas. There are 5 cases within which they would be left for dead if the owner found another carbon and atoned with that, if the owner died, etc. But with a communal carbon, there is no such halacha, as we learned before, that the owner can't die in a communal carbon because the owner is the whole community. There's someone there. And so if the kohen brings a private carbon, donates, essentially they're bringing a private carbon instead of a communal carbon, and the halachas change. Another difference is minchas hayachid kreva kollel. A private person's mincha entirely goes up on the mizbeach, and this is by a kohen. That's a private carbon. Minchas hatzibur kreva kollel. But a communal mincha, such as the mincha, the omer, which is the barley, which is brought on the second day of Pesach to begin the count of the omer to Shavuos, and the 2 breads of wheat, which are brought at Shavuos, and the lechem hapanim, the showbreads. So all of these are communal mincha offerings, and they're not entirely brought on the mizbeach. Rather, they're eaten by kahanim. So if you take the funds of an individual kohen and you purchase, let's say, the wheat bread, that should be a personal mincha and all go on the mizbeach and be burnt up. Yet we're not going to treat it so. So why are you okay with the kohen donating if he's not obligated? Must be the kohen is obligated, and therefore his funds are part of the communal carbon. So somebody interrupted this question before we can answer what of this question about the kohen's person, if the kohen's coin being his own funds, not part of communal carbon if he's not obligated in it. And so then the mincha being purchased with that coin would be a kohen's personal mincha and needs to be completely brought on the mizbeach. Someone interrupted and said, you can't ask a question, the first part of this question, which was really that there's a distinction between a communal chatas and a personal chatas of whether it's left for dead. The kasha shivila adam davar. Can you ask a question from upon someone's opinion, from an opinion that he doesn't agree with? In other words, you're asking, look, I have a distinction between a personal chatas and a communal chatas. Actually, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with that. The Tanan, as we learned, she'ein chatas tzibur mesa, that a communal chatas does not die on account of being ownerless or no longer needed. Rabbi Yehuda, however, Rabbi Yehuda says, Thomas, that it is left for dead, that even a communal chatas is like a personal chatas. So you're asking a distinction between a communal obligation and a private obligation in regards to chatas. Actually, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with that. And you're asking Rabbi Yehuda, how can you say this halacha, after all, a communal carbon and a private carbon are the same, are distinct? Actually, Rabbi Yehuda says they're the same. So the first part of the question is not really a correct question. That's what the Gemara says here. However, but the second question stands, which is that the mincha of a private kohen all goes up on the mizbeach, and the mincha of a communal carbon, that only part goes on the mizbeach, and the rest the kohen, the Yisrael gets to the kohen gets to eat, and it goes for communal carbon. And if this person individually this Kohen who's not obligated is gifting his half shekel into the communal coffers, but it's not a part of the communal obligation, so therefore it doesn't become part of the communal funds. So the mincha purchased with his money is going to be a private Kohen's mincha. And to that, Rabbi Yehuda responds to the Chachamim, this is not a private gift. That actually they completely gift it into the coffers as a communal carbon. It's not that he's putting it in the coffers, but wants to maintain some sort of individuality of the coin. There's a intent for it to become a part of the communal fund without an obligation. But it is a complete intermingling of the funds. Go ahead and use it as you need, however you want, and the carbon purchased with that fund, with that particular coin, is no more the coins than the rest of the communities. The Ina Mesivale, so the Chachamim respond to Rabbi Yehuda, well, if that's the case, since it's already given over to the community entirely, it's the same as the communal obligation. So why did the Mishnah only say, if the Kohen donated, he hasn't sinned, tell him to donate. If he's giving it over in such a great way, so then why did the Mishnah only say that it's not a sin if he did so? That's what Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Ben Bukhari. Actually say it better, say the Kohen can give it because he's doing it in such a great way. So that's the end of that machlokas. Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, Kol ha'over al ha'pekudim, everyone who passes through the count. So this over is going to be, the word over, passing through, is going to be the source of the machlokas of whether or not the Kohen is obligated or the Levi is obligated or not. Because we know the count of the Bnei Yisrael, that where they gave a half shekel and they were counted at the time of the Mishkan, that included all those that went out into battle and all those that had work from the age of 20, and there was of the that excluded Bnei Levi and excluded the Kahanim. And that was a separate count. However, if over here, the pass through means everybody that passed through the Yamsuf, the sea, to freedom from the Mitzrayim. So then, of course, the Kahanim were included. So that's the distinction over here in the meaning that everybody has to give a half shekel kol ha'over al ha'pekudim. Everybody that went through the pekudim, what does that mean? So Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Nechemia, Chad Amar, one said that when it says kol ha'over, kol da'avar b'yama, that it's everybody who went through the Yamsuf, through the Red Sea, at the Kriyas Yamsuf, at the splitting of the sea. So Yitin, he has to give the half shekel, whereas Vacharna and the other one said, Amar, and the other one says, Kol davar al pikud haya. It means everybody that passed through the count, excluding the Leviim, Yitin, that's the one who has to give this half shekel. So man dama kol davar b'yama Yitin. So the one who says that everybody went through the sea. So Messiah Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. That's the basis, the source, the support for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that even Kahanim are obligated in this mitzvah. And Manda Amar Kol Davar Al Pikudai Yitin. And the one who says that this is what the Torah means is whoever went through the count in front of the designation table where each person was given their place. So the Messiah ben Bukhari, that supports the opinion of Ben Bukhari of Yavna that the Kahanim and the Leviim are not included in this count. So even though our Gemara doesn't mention Leviim, Ben Bukhari and the Mishnah doesn't mention the Levi, it just says Kohen, indeed, this would be an exemption even for Leviim. That's the way Tosfos explains this. The next Mishnah talks about who else is included and excluded in this mitzvah. Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, even though we said that we don't take collateral, we collect and don't take collateral from women and servants and minors. But if they want to donate and give, so then we would take it from them, and it's included. However, if a non-Jew or even a Kutite, which are, I think today they're the Samaritans, Shomranim. These are groups of people that have been, in a certain sense, idolaters from when they joined Am Yisrael. And in certain mitzvahs they keep well, and certain mitzvahs they don't. So if they give their shekel, we don't accept it from them. We also don't accept from their hands kinei zavin, kinei zavos, kinei elodos, v'chatos v'hashamas. These, the first three, are the two bird karbanos that are brought for a zav, male who had an abnormal semen emission, so that's like a gonorrhea, and a woman who had an abnormal menstrual flow, meaning it's outside of the normal period. And a woman who brings two birds on account of having given birth. So obviously, these are based on concepts of tumah, and there's no concept of tumah for a non-Jew, so they can't be obligated in bringing a carbon. They can't bring a carbon even as a non-obligation for a tumah that doesn't exist for them. So a non-Jew can't bring that carbon for sure. But even a kusi, which there's a machlokes in the Gemara whether they were real converts or not at one point. Nevertheless, since they had essentially become their own religion and have their own semi-idolatry and customs and rules, so we don't accept their tumah karbanos either, even though that perhaps they may be Jewish. But the Chacham said they're now their own group, their own religion, and we don't accept their tumah karbanos. And also chatos v'ashamas, and also echatas and asham, which are sin offerings. And there, for sure, even a non-Jew could be included in that, because even non-Jews have mitzvahs that they can transgress. Nevertheless, we don't accept a sin offering, because by the parsha of sin offerings, by Chatas, the Torah says, Bnei Yisrael, Daven Bnei Yisrael, speak to Bnei Yisrael. So it's clear that a Chatas offering, a sin offering, is explicitly a form of tshuva for a Jewish person. So we don't accept these karbanos as well. So this is the rule. Anything that is a gift offering, a donation, so that we accept from them. But anything that's an obligatory carbon, that's not a donation or a gift offering, we don't accept from them. And similarly, we have the same thing happened with Ezra. It says explicitly that the Kutim, they wanted to come and partake in the building of the Beis Hamikdash, the new Beis Hamikdash, and Ezra said to them, "Shenemar," it says, "Lo lochem v'lanu livnus Beis Elokeinu." It is not for you and for us to build a house of Hashem. In other words, it's not your part to partake in the construction of the Beis Hamikdash. That's something for us to do. So now we go to the today's Daf Dalet and Aleph. Now, Mishnah introduces a new thing which we saw the other day, which I mentioned the other day, that there's a kalban, which is either a 12th or a 24th of the half shekel that they have to give, an additional small coin, It's machlokes of how big this coin is. Is it 1/12, 1/24 of a full shekel? So the half shekel would be, it's a 12th of the amount that needs to be given, or it's a 48th of a full shekel, so it's a 24th of the half shekel that needs to be given. So an additional small amount has to be given. This is a kalbun. And the reason for this, Rashi says in the Gemara, that it is on account of that the small coins, the half shekels, have to then be processed into larger coins. And so there's a processing fee essentially because when they would take all the small coins and bring it to a banker to change it into, so let's say they had 100 half shekels, so then they need 50 full shekels, or they wanted to bring that into a gold coin, and they would transfer that down so that there was a fee. The money changer, the banker, would then have a processing fee. So the person donating the half shekel also had to pay this kalbon in order to pay for that processing fee. So these are the people that are obligated in the kalbon, the additional small coin for this processing fee. The Leviim, the Yisraelim, the Levi, and the Yisrael. So obviously, as we said before, that means that the Levi is obligated over here, and that would be according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Yisraelim, the Levi, and the Yisrael, the Gerim, the Avadim, Shechrarim, and converts and emancipated servants. And this is a unique split here, because we saw earlier that the idea is that according to Ben Bukhari, that Kahanim are exempt, Levim are also exempt. So Kahanim don't have to pay this kalbon, the additional small coin. Also, women who are not obligated in the mitzvah at all also don't have to. Vavadim, and also servants that are not obligated in the mitzvah, if they give it, they don't have to give the additional small coin, the processing fee. The Kahanim, and even minors. If somebody gives a half shekel and says, "Look, I'm giving this for my neighbor, the kohen, or my friend," al yidei isha, or on behalf of a woman who is also not obligated, al yidei evet, for a servant, al yidei katan, for a child, pater. So all of these would be exempt from the processing fee. Since they're not obligated, I'm giving it on behalf of someone that's not obligated, and therefore I don't have to pay the kalbon. Also, if instead of giving a half shekel for myself, I say, here's a half shekel for me and my friend who's also obligated. Here's a full shekel for myself and for my friend that's obligated. So now I avoided an extra processing fee. So I only have to pay one kalbon, one processing fee, because we're doing it all at once. However, Rabbi Meir based kalbonis. Rabbi Meir says, no, you have to give both, and the Gemara is going to explain the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Shekel. What about the other way around? If I gift the larger coin and I take a half shekel, which is over here it's called a shekel. So if I give a full shekel and I take a half shekel change, so now essentially I've given I've avoided a processing fee, because I've now actually swapped out one of your smaller coins to a larger coin. However, that larger coin also needs to be swapped out, and I'm saving myself a change fee that I would have if I brought this money to a banker. So shekel chayiv shnei kalbonos. So I'm obligated in two kalbon, one for the change that I got, and one because ultimately the hekdesh still has to upgrade. And the Gemara is going to say whether this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir or the Chachamim. Hashekel al yidei ani va'al yidei shchenai va'al yad ben iroi pater. Somebody who donates a half shekel on behalf of a poor person, or for a neighbor, or for someone else from a city, pater, he's going to be exempt from this additional coin. Ve'im hilvan chayiv. However, if it's not, I'm doing it as a tzedakah on behalf of someone else and paying their fee, where therefore I don't have to pay the kalbon, the extra small coin, but rather I'm lending it to them and they're going to pay me back. So then I have to lend them the full fee, the half shekel plus the kalbon plus the processing fee. Now, for the next part, we just have to understand a certain halacha in regards to partnerships of an inheritance. The halacha is that when a person dies and he has multiple heirs who can inherit his estate, as before the estate has been split, it still belongs essentially to the estate. So all the children that are inheriting, all the heirs essentially are partners. And as partners, they'd be exempt of certain halachas that only individuals are obligated in, such as the meiser behema, the tithe of animals, where the halacha is that of a whole herd, all the new animals all the newborn animals from that year have to be passed through account, and then the 10th one is taken as a meiser, as a tithe. That's only true if it's for an individually owned carbon, but if it's animal. But if it's a partnership where multiple people own the same animal, you don't give meiser. In a case where it's still part of the estate, it still belongs to the father. If it still belongs to the father, there's no partnership amongst the heirs, and so they have to obligate. They would be obligated in meiser. However, that would also be an exemption from the kalban, from the extra small coin that that would be paid, because it's now the father, the estate, meaning the father, paying on behalf of the children. And so that's paying on behalf of someone else, so you don't have to pay the kalban. Whereas if the children already, or the heirs already split the inheritance, so now they're all, even if they're still in one entity, but they already designated and said, okay, this is yours, this is mine, etc. So then they all are individual owners, and each one has their own obligation, and so each one's paying on behalf of themselves, and so they have to pay the kalban, they have to pay the extra fee. So the Mishnah says, ha'achim, brothers, meaning heirs, hashutafin. So if they're partners, meaning they're not in a part of the original arrangement, meaning it's not a part of the estate, they already split, shechayev v'kalban, they would then be obligated in giving the kalban, because each one's paying for themselves out of the estate, out of their inheritance, but they're paying for themselves. And paturim ma'aseh behema, they are exempt of the tithe because they're essentially one entity of partners. But if they had not yet split the estate, meaning they're obligated in the tithing of the animals, because it's still part of the father's estate, so it's not a partnership. There's a one single owner, the deceased owner of this estate. So then the paying of the shekel from that estate on their behalf is really someone else paying on their behalf, and they don't have to pay the processing fee. The kamu kalban. So now, how much is this kalban? Ma kesef. The Rabbi Meir says it's a ma kesef, which is a 24th of a shekel. The Chachamim say it's a half a ma, which is a 48th of a shekel, and we're paying a half a shekel, so it's a half of that in percentage. Now, Ava Pisha Amru. So in our Mishnah, the Mishnah began with saying that we don't take a mashkon, even though we said that you don't take a mashkon, you don't take collateral from a child. But we do ask them to pay. Here you say that you pay, but previously we said that you don't ask a child to pay. Again, same idea that we saw earlier. Depending on whether it's a child that has not reached puberty, so they don't pay, and we don't ask them to pay. If they're above, it's bar mitzvah, so we ask them to pay, but we won't take collateral if they don't pay. Then we said Hanachri v'Akusi. The Nachri and the Kusi do not pay. Amar Rabba. So Rabba said, Tipater. From here we can learn, Kamana Amar Kusi v'Kanachri, that the Kutites are like non-Jews. Nispalgan, because we have a machlokes about that. Kusi Kanachri divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says that they're like non-Jews. They're like Jews in all manners. So we have a machlokes elsewhere of whether or not they are Jews in all manners or not. And here we have in our Mishnah that it says like Rebbe that they are not Jewish. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Masnita benachri. that our Mishnah actually is only referring to non-Jews. But by Kutites, we would accept the half shekel from them. So the Gemara says, Vatani came. And indeed, it seems that there's a brisa that supports that, because the brisa says, in the beginning of Vayikra, it says, Adam ki yakar mikem. If a man would accept, would donate a carbon. So Adam, if a man, a person were to donate a carbon, l'rabos, who's that going to include? So l'rabos is a nachri, or l'rabos is a ger. That would include the donation of either a convert or even a non-Jew is donating with a proper intent. Mikem, from amongst you. Who does that include? La'itzi es hamumrim. That would exclude even a Jewish person who is a mumar, who is essentially deviated from the entire Torah and converted out to another religion. That's a mumar. However, that seems to be that someone who just a kuti, who does keep parts of the Torah, is not a complete mumar, would be included and obligated in the in a carbon. And so we accept the carbon even from a kuti. That's the brisa that seems to support this idea that our Mishnah is not talking about the kuti. However, but our Mishnah it seems to disagree with Rabbi Elazar, meaning obviously Rabbi Elazar can't disagree with the Mishnah, meaning it's a contradiction to Rabbi Elazar, because it says it says we don't accept from them karbanos. Which karbanos? The karbanos that are based on a tumah of a person, they don't bring the bird, the two bird karbanos. It can't, and our Mishnah obviously is not referring to only non-Jews, because as we mentioned in the Mishnah, non-Jews don't have tumah. So obviously they're exempt. If they don't have tumah, they can't be that this is an obligation for them to bring. So rather must be talking about the kutim, and still it says that we don't accept their karbanos in this. Okay, so the first part is talking about the non-Jews. We don't accept the half shekel coin from them. And the next part about not accepting karbanos, that's talking about a kutim, and that's the way to split the Mishnah. Yes, indeed, that's the meaning of the Mishnah. The beginnings talk about not taking the half shekel from a non-Jew and not taking these particular karbanos from a kuti. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan says, the source of this we learned was from Ezra. Ezra said that in the construction of the Beis HaMikdash, we didn't want to accept the coin, the contributions from the kutim. So he says, Rabbi Yochanan says, Batchila, for the initial construction, for the building fund, we don't accept from them money or particular items. However, in the end, we can accept from them nondescript items. So coins, money, which would essentially be swallowed up in the coffers and become part of the larger fund, and would never be as a particular item. But we don't accept a particular item which would then always be identified as the item that so-and-so donated. Like we have Shar Nicanor, the Nicanor's entrance, which had doors that were donated by Nicanor. So that's the thing that we would avoid, that we wouldn't take a specified item from a particular item from a non-Jew or a kuti in donation of this construction or the upkeep, because that then remains named for that person. However, Rish Lakish says no. Regardless, we don't accept from them whether it's a particular item or a nondescript item. The Gemara says, okay, so Masnitin Pliya Rabbi Yochanan. Our Mishnah seems to not agree with Rabbi Yochanan. It's a contradiction to Rabbi Yochanan, because in our Mishnah it says Mekabel Mehen Hekdesh. Sorry, this is a Mishnah. this is actually a brisa, right? It's not our Mishnah. This is, it's a Tosefte. So Masnita really is a brisa. Pligal Rabbi Yochanan. Ein mekable mehen hektish and adova lebedek abayis. We don't accept from them hektish, donate something sanctified, and adova and gifts for the upkeep of the building, the building fund. So that's obviously this is true even after the completion of the base HaMikdash, because that's what the bedek habayis is, the building fund, the upkeep of the building. So Rabbi Yochanan is going to explain, you're right, that because he says there is such a thing that we don't accept from them even upkeep, not just the building fund, but that's if it's a particular item like doors or a chandelier or something like that, something specific which would then be attributed to that person. However, Rish Lakish says we don't accept beginning or end, we don't upkeep or initial building fund, we don't accept from them any gifts, whether it's a particular item or not. So our Mishnah is a contradiction to Rish Lakish, Atani Akol, as we learned, Akol Shavin, Shoyed Nidrin Nidrin, everybody agrees that they can make donations, Nidrin V'Nidorin. So the halacha of an erech is somebody who says my value or someone else's value or the value of a certain item is donated to the Beis HaMikdash. And there's a question of whether or not we say that a non-Jew is ne'erach. Somebody can say the value of this person, or whether he himself can make such a contribution of an erechin. And to that we say everybody agrees that if he didn't say the value, but it says damei alai or damei Yisrael alai, this person's money or my own money is upon me, so that's a self-donation. That's a gift that we accept it. And how can Rish Lakish say we don't accept their donations? So Rish Lakish is going to explain that when it says in the Mishnah Nodrin that they can make a gift, that this is talking about a carbon which goes entirely on the Mizbeach, and that's what it means that they can give a gift. They could give a gift of a carbon, which we saw earlier. They're allowed to gift a carbon to the Mizbeach. Nicha Nidrin Oila. So he said, okay, that explains Nodrin. They give a gift, but Nidarin is that they become a donation, which seems to be the fund, their value, their funds would be donated. Ella, so that too is going to have to be Kasham Yisrael or Re'ah La'olah. That it's when a Jew says it's incumbent upon me to bring a carbon olah. And the non-Jew heard, and he said, whatever he said, I'm accepting upon myself as well. I'll match him. So that's where the nidorin is, that he can make a neder based on his own value. So the Gemara continues. This is a Gemara Menachos. So they can bring a carbon. What about the libations that come with the carbon? The carbon that he's going to bring doesn't bring along a nesachim libations, which is the oils and wines that would come along with it, because whenever somebody brings nesachim, there's the leftovers of it. Doesn't it go into a klisharis, a holy vessel? And when it does, it becomes the leftovers become kodesh to be sold, and the value goes to the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. And according to Rish Lakish, that's prohibited to accept from them. So because that's bringing a particular item. And that would be even according to Rabbi Yochanan a problem. So Rav Yossi Rabban says, I have an answer for this. Because did we not learn ne'erochin va'orchin lo lebedek kabayas inun, that when they take an erech that according to Rabbi Meir, that their value is donated, that goes the va'orchin lo lebedek kabayas inun, don't they go, the funds go to the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash? So what are you going to answer over there? He's donating it to Shammai. He's donating it as a gift to Hashem. And the remainder, or what is the Beis HaMikdash going to do with it? It's going to go to the upkeep. But it's not a donation for the upkeep, but rather it's a donation which the Beis HaMikdash, as a result of the gift, will use for the upkeep. So you're going to say over here, he's just donating to the Beis HaMikdash. And as a result, the leftovers go to the Bedek Habayis, to the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, but that doesn't count as a part of the inclusion of the prohibition, to, according to Reish Lakish, to accept from them any sort of donation, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, only a specific donation. So now the Gemara says, "Ma'avad la Reish Lakish." What does Reish Lakish say? That this the prohibition of accepting from a non-Jew, and what difference does it make to him? According to Reish Lakish, according to Rabbi Yochanan, this is a good answer. That look, he doesn't know that it's going to the Bedek Habayis. He's just donating it to Shammai. But according to Reish Lakish, even from the start, whether it's a specified item or not, even a non-specified item, it's prohibited, because it eventually it'll be go to the Bedek Habayis, and that's prohibited. So Pasala, so he explains that the pasuk says Lelachem alanu livnos beis Elokeinu. That's what Ezra said. It's not incumbent upon you and us to build the house of Hashem. And the idea is that he would have to know that it's going to the construction and the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, where you can say, look, I contributed to the upkeep. But if it's not lachem alanu, where he feels that it's us and them together, then he's just donating to a gift to Hashemayim, and as a result, there's more funds. That's not a problem. Rav Chizkiya Bar Siman Shal Me'ata. He had a question like this: we don't accept from them the upkeep of the city as well, for the wells and the walls and towers. So we see we don't accept any gift from them for Yerushalayim. This would be a prohibition not only for karbanos. Okay, let's stop here, and tomorrow we'll continue with the opinion of the Kalbon in the Mishnah. Have a good day, everyone.